of Washington, D.C. I am at the Metropolitan Police Department headquarters with Chief Peter Newsham and members of MPD's command staff. Let me just begin by reminding everybody that the District of Columbia is experiencing a cold emergency, and anybody needing help, city services, please call 311 for that assistance. I also want to turn it over to Chief Newsham to talk about a very significant arrest in Washington, D.C. last night, where we have arrested a third person involved in the homicide of Jamari Sidnor, a 17-year-old who was shot and killed driving down the street in a D.C. neighborhood just some weeks ago. This person, who the chief will describe and talk to you about the arrest, is also facing 2 additional homicide charges. So one person, 18-year-old James Mayfield, is facing charges, has been arrested and charged with 3 homicides in the District of Columbia, and is also facing additional robbery charges. I want to thank all of the detectives and officers involved in finding James Mayfield. Also, our Department of Forensic Sciences, who was instrumental in making sure that the gun recovered could be connected to these additional crimes in our city. And I want to thank everybody who will be involved moving forward to make sure that we not only have justice for Jamari, but for any victim of crime in the District of Columbia. So let me turn it over to the Chief to talk a little bit more about that.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, media, for joining us here at MPD Headquarters. I'm joined by Commander Leslie Parsons of my Criminal Investigations Division, Commander William Fitzgerald of the 5th District, and Captain Anthony Haith of our Homicide Branch. On August 10th, 2017, 17-year-old Jamari Sidnor was shot in the 1400 block of Saratoga Avenue Northeast. Jamari was a beloved graduate of Wilson High School. She was scheduled to attend her sister's wedding, and she was scheduled to attend college in Florida a few days after she was murdered. This murder was particularly impactful to the MPD family because Jamari was the daughter of one of our sergeants. At approximately 5:15 p.m. on Tuesday, December 26, members of our 5th District were dispatched to the 2200 block of Douglas Street, Northeast, for the sounds of gunshots. When they got on the scene, they located a victim in front of the residence suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. He was taken to a local hospital where he was pronounced dead by the medical staff. That victim was identified as 38-year-old Jermaine Bowens of Northeast Washington, D.C. At approximately 2:50 a.m. on Wednesday, December 27th, members of the 5th District were again dispatched to the 1800 block of Bryant Street, Northeast, for the report of a shooting. When they arrived on the scene, they located a victim deceased inside of the residence, suffering from a gunshot wound to the head. That victim was identified as 21-year-old Elijah Henry of Northeast Washington, D.C. At approximately 9 a.m. on the 27th, December 27th, we received reports of an attempt robbery involving a firearm in the 3100 block of Berry Road, Northeast. 5D patrol officers and patrol officers from our Special Operations Division were able to get quickly into the area, and they located a suspect. That suspect has been identified as James Mayfield of Northeast Washington, D.C., and he was located in the 3100 block of Banneker Drive, Northeast, where he was taken into custody. Over the course of the next several hours, detectives were able to gather enough evidence to charge James Mayfield with the murders of Jermaine Bowens and Elijah Henry, and he was also charged pursuant to a D.C. Superior Court warrant for the murder of Jamari Sidnor. James Mayfield is also a suspect in at least 3 other robberies that occurred in the 5th District in the last 30 or so hours. So to recap, 18-year-old James Mayfield of Northeast D.C. has been arrested and charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder while armed, 1 count of attempted robbery, and carrying a pistol without a license. And he remains a person of interest in 3 other robberies. I want to give special thanks to Dr. Jennifer Smith of our Department of Forensic Science. Her team was able to quickly work on the evidence in this case to give us the evidence that we needed to make these charges. I also want to thank our 5D patrol officers, our Special Operations Division officers, our 5th District detectives, and our homicide detectives. We can take any questions that you all might have.
Chief, back in October when Robert Moses was charged with first-degree murder in the Sigma arrest, we knew James Bayfield was named in those court documents. Obviously, you've been looking for him for a long time. How do you phrase it this way, what took so long to find him?
You know, when someone is trying not to be found, they can be very difficult to find. It's my understanding that Mr. Mayfield has actually changed his appearance somewhat from the photographs that were released. So, you know, we had a team of folks from our Capital Area Regional Fugitive Task Force that were out there looking for him. These officers that are from multiple jurisdictions in the region do an excellent job of bringing some of the most violent offenders into custody on a regular basis. I can't explain exactly why we weren't able to get him more quickly. Usually when we put an image out like that, like we did early on in this case, usually we'll get some tips, but that was not the case in this particular case.
The two other murders on Bryant and Douglas, were the motives random robberies in those cases as well?
I think the motives will become more clear when the cases are presented in court, and that should probably be later this afternoon.
Is there a possibility he's linked to other homicides that we don't know about yet? And can you talk about the forensics with the gun? Do we know that that's now linked to the Sigma case?
Well, we have, I can't talk about that type of detail in the cases, but we have a person who we have charged with first-degree murder in 3 separate incidents, so we most certainly will be looking to see if he was involved in any of the other violent occurrences that have occurred in the city. And to see, you know, a person, and this actually anecdotally is a good example of how one person can create so much, violence in our city. The people that are responsible for violence in our city is a very small group of people. And, you know, this is a person that's responsible for violence, particularly during our holiday season. I'm just very thankful that our officers were able to get him when he committed that last robbery.
So, Chief, can you tell us whether, other than the suspect being the same, whether the 3 homicides are connected in any other way?
I think that information may become more apparent when you see the court documents.
And then can you tell us about how he was apprehended? So there was a lookout for him for the murder, but the officer who arrested him was actually responding to just an armed robbery?
That's correct. Yeah. And so what happened was he was arrested for the robbery, and we were able to develop evidence. Detectives worked very diligently, tirelessly. We were able to develop evidence that tied him to both of those homicides. Okay, anyone else? You have question, off-topic questions?
Well, I'm going to say on this, if I can, just so you mentioned how this was impactful to the department because of it hit home as one of your own relatives. What is it like now that you finally have closure, all 3 suspects in custody and trial?
Well, I tell you, you know, when a case touches you like Jamari's case did, it really kind of reemphasizes our role as police officers to make sure that we close all these cases. You know, we always say it brings some closure to the families, but, you know, you have 3 families that had to spend this holiday season without their loved one. You know, and you know, he's going to have to face, you know, the consequences of those actions. And hopefully the consequences will be fitting for the type of thing that he's caused to those families.
Can you ask about the internal review findings on the Terrence Sterling killing and what your take is on this?
Yeah, I've said from the very beginning on that case, I'm in a very precarious position in that in the event the officer has an appeal that he files, I have to look at all of that information objectively. So I'm really not in a position to talk about it publicly.
Can you tell us what the findings are, I guess, just so we have that on tape?
The findings of,
Your internal.
yeah, that was, I've talked about that in a lot of detail. In that the case was found to be unjustified by our Use of Force Review Board, and there has been a recommendation for termination. And the member has requested what is called an adverse action panel. which should be held within the next couple of months. When we get a date, we'll share that with you.
Can you address the crime drop? We're down about 15 to 18% homicides. I know you'll address this later in the year, but it's a substantial decrease, especially coming off of 2015, now in 2 straight years of declines.
Yeah, very, very pleased with the progress that we have made in this city. It's due to the efforts of a lot of different people, a lot of different agencies. The good news is we had significant reductions in 2017. We're facing the lowest number of violent crimes that we've had in our city in a very long time. It's very rewarding to be able to be in this position. The bad news is January 1st is a week away, and we'll continue to roll up our sleeves and make sure we keep moving in the right direction as we roll into 2018.
What do you attribute the drop to?
It's a lot of different things. We talk about it all the time. Crime, the recipe for crime is a lot of things. It's opportunity, it's education, it's properly treating substance abuse and mental health issues, and then it's appropriately dealing with our violent offenders. And I think that all of us plays a role in each of those things, and I think that I have seen my colleagues, my director colleagues, really having a focus on what they do to try and help me impact crime in our city. So I think it's a combination of things.
Chief, can you update us on the shooting this morning in 900 Eastern? Is that fatal? What does that mean?
The last report I had on that shooting is it is not fatal, but the victim in that case is in critical condition.
Do you know, is it the clerk at the store who shot?
It does not appear to be the clerk at the store, so it does not appear to be associated with the 7-Eleven.
Can I ask the mayor one question? Now that Mr. Mayfield is facing charges, have you heard from any community members? I know he, in the court documents, it said he was a gang member and somebody who the chief just said was responsible for a lot of violence in the city. Can you speak to how this is sort of a relief for the community?
I don't know anything in particular about the suspect other than we have an 18-year-old in the last several months we think is responsible for 3 homicides, and we don't know how many robberies. So we have a person who has really, in a lot of ways, terrorized the community. And so we want to send a strong message to any victim of crime, any person who would commit robberies in our city, that our detectives and police officers and community members want to live in safe neighborhoods, and they are going to work to make sure that we have safe neighborhoods. And so I'm very relieved that he's off the street because he had a weapon, and he has demonstrated his willingness to use that weapon. And as the chief mentioned, when we mix weapons with violent offenders, we can have unsafe neighborhoods, and that's what they work every day to prevent.
Mayor, could you comment just overall on the decrease in apparently just about every single category of crime for 2017 under first year chief of police?
Well, we always knock on wood when we talk about crime, and we aren't satisfied with any level of violence in our neighborhoods. But I know that the chief and all of the commanders, the lieutenants and the patrol officers are very focused on how to drive down crime in our city. And we are very focused on every category of crime. I can't really say better than the chief has already said that he has one part of the solution, and that's the enforcement part. But we spend just as much time, maybe even more, on the opportunity side of how you drive down crime, getting more people in jobs, more people in appropriate public health situations, but also more conversations with communities that are fed up with crime and that will work hand in hand with the police to make sure communities are safe. So we will keep working and keep driving down the numbers.
Mayor, can I ask you about taxes?
Yes.
The CFO's office just released their interpretation of the IRS's interpretation and guidance. Can you, in 20 seconds or less, just boil it down, what it means for D.C. taxpayers? Will they or will they not be able to prepay their property taxes and get credit on their taxes?
Well, I don't know if I can do it in 20 seconds, but let's just talk about the GOP tax bill that basically is going to double tax residents, many residents in the District of Columbia. So previously, in 2017, for example, residents can deduct their state income taxes and their property taxes, and it's not capped. Beginning in 2018, because of the GOP tax bill, those dollars will no longer be deductible. And so many people want to figure out if they can prepay those amounts. The bill precludes the prepayment of income taxes. It does not preclude the prepayment of property taxes. And so that is what the CFO commented on today. And you can see the CFO's remarks, but what he focused on and what the IRS guidance said is, when does the tax liability begin for 2018? And according to our law, it begins with the passage of the 2018 budget, the enactment, I should say, of the 2018 budget, which happened on October 1st, 2017. So residents can go to ocfo.dc.gov to see the estimate of what their 2018 bill will be, but their liability, their responsibility for 2018 taxes began on October 1st, 2017.
So DC residents will be able to prepay and get the deduction?
Well, we have already established that DC residents can prepay. The IRS, of course, is responsible for determining what is deductible or not. They provided a couple of examples of what would be deductible paid in 2017 for 2018. Our CFO's read is that because of when our budget is passed and when our property owners become liable for property taxes, that we fit into one of the examples that the IRS provided. We, however, do not give tax advice. So we continue to encourage you to reach out to your tax accountant for if that prepayment would become deductible in 2018. For 2017, I should say. Thank you.